Hi, my name is Corey Reeser, and I will be doing this week's Ed Talk on student-centered learning environments because this seemed to be mainly the predominant theme that Ayers was trying to communicate in chapters 3 through 5 of this week's reading. So I wanted to do a concentration on basically how to develop a cohesive and productive student learning environment that's reflective of basically the cultural experiences of the students. So constructive learning environments. What do they look like? On the left, I got this chart, and it basically shows a very vague representation of how to build a constructive learning environment. And the important aspect to understand is that the teacher has to be involved. I mean, you have the two circles basically representing student-centered learning, but the teacher aspect of a constructive learning environment is important because as Ayers identified, as he basically builds little sections in his classroom that serve specific purposes to achieve a certain goal, basically to enhance his learning environment. He has little sections that basically promote that throughout his classroom. And another important feature he did identify was basically just hang the kids' work up and show that you're actually taking an interest in what they're doing. So, and an important thing to remember is that if kids or your students enjoy or are interested in the subject they're pursuing and that subject is involved with the content material you're trying to get them to achieve, then they're more likely to achieve their goals because they're interested in the subject matter. So that's a very important thing to learn. And how do you do this? I found this picture and I thought it was a perfect representation of what Ayers was communicating, which was basically the teacher has to build a bridge between the unfamiliar information with the students, which is, as you can see on the right, is writing, reading, English, content, math. These are all standards they have to meet and they don't know how. Simply teaching them here's an essay 1, 2, 3, 4 is not really going to do much for them. But if you take the time to let them research an issue, for example, that they're familiar with that has to do with the experience they've had in the past, you can develop their understanding through researching that topic on how to develop an appropriate essay. So basically you can use, but this basically takes the teacher to do. You have to bridge the vague and archaic content standards with real life scenarios that the students can interact with, because this is what they'll remember. They're not going to remember standard procedures. They're going to remember the experience. And that's an important thing to understand, and the teacher has to build that bridge. And this basically leads into the next segment, which is take the time, to tailor your lessons. In order to build a bridge, you have to understand your students, and you have to create an environment of cultural inclusiveness. Because if you look on the left, this is a perfect representation. It talks about all the different aspects of a student's mind. You have self-identity, ethnic identity, personal development, and culture, and these are all things when students are going through the educational process, the social aspect of their interaction with us as educators, and they're trying to basically weigh all four of these things on what they want to basically portray to the world. And as a teacher, it's important to basically understand this, understand what their interests are, and create your classroom environment to reflect not only the interests, but the culture and basically the realities the students face. That's an important thing as educators we must do. So, and this basically, you just have to develop a coherent curriculum that reflects a fluid learning environment, or however fluid a learning environment you want in your classroom. And I used this picture because I thought method number 4 was reflected what Professor Molina discussed briefly in class on the 23rd, I believe, when he said that he gave the example of giving students the ability to, or if you give students the ability to control their grades. So if you say, you give them an example on a project or an essay, here's what will get you an A, and here's what an A looks like. So provide them an example, and here's what a B looks like, here's what a C looks like. They're more likely to achieve the higher level because they have an example or a roadmap, if you will, of how to get to that goal or achieve an A. So you're basically providing them an extra platform, and you're giving them control over the outcome of what they think they can accomplish. And this will promote, in my opinion, a deeper interaction with the content and lesson material you're trying to communicate. And leading into this, here's an example that I have found. It basically talks about, I don't have access to this technology, so it made it even cooler for myself personally. However, it talks about this teacher and this group of teachers using technology to create a cloud-based 3D learning environment in which students interact with teachers and content material. It's just the article on EdUtopia, which also is a great learning resource for new educators. If anyone is interested, you can see I use it all the time, but this particular article just discusses how they create a 3D learning environment using Pixar technology, and they have to interact with students and teachers based off of the needs they have. So it basically teaches them how to break down the barriers of standard education, and it's a pilot program. So there's only a few schools that get to use it, but I thought that was a great example of how to create a fluid learning environment based off of the upcoming needs of the students that we have.